And welcome to the Coach Show. Here we are with Nigel Worthington, manager of the Northern Ireland national soccer team. Welcome to the Coach Show, Nigel.
Thank you very much.
Nigel, a phenomenal career as a player and as a manager. When did you know, at what point in your career, that you wanted to take up management?
Very, very early on in my playing career, about the age of 23, 24, I decided that I'd like to start doing my coaching certificates, and I gradually did it from 23 through to about, I think it was 35 by the time I got the pro license, thinking that when I finished playing I'd like to go into the coaching, and not really once thinking about the management side. And I was very pleased that I achieved the certificates over that period of time, because it eased myself into the coaching role, and lo and behold, the managerial situation came around out of the blue, and it's something that I've really enjoyed over the last 13 years.
Now, were you one of those players who took notes in the locker room, who wrote down every drill that maybe Ron Atkinson or Lou McCarry or Howard Wilkinson did in practice?
I wouldn't say I wrote every session down, but I think you take information on board if you're a football person. And over 20 years as a player, certainly under Wilkinson, who was very methodical in his preparation, very professional. Ron, who was very man management was different class. You pick up different lessons from coaches and managers, and it's like people say, could you be another Brian Clough, could you be another Howard Wilkinson? I think you can have all the different sessions, but I also think you've got to be yourself, and that's exactly what I try to do. Gain knowledge, put it all together, and then you've got to sell it to the players in your way and not through somebody else.
Big Ron, what was his strength as a manager when you played for him?
I'll tell you a little story about Big Ron. 1991, we had a fantastic season. Sheffield Wednesday, and Ron was large as life. And there was this day we were playing Manchester United at Hillsborough. 1 o'clock kick-off on Boxing Day. So we're in the hotel on Christmas Eve. He said, I want everybody down in the breakfast room 9 o'clock for pre-match, basically breakfast. And when we got down to breakfast in the morning, there was 9 bottles of champagne. There was 3 on each table. And he said, before any player or any staff member leaves this room, I want all 9 bottles finished. Now, there was some who liked a little tipple, and there was others not too bothered because they knew Manchester United at 1 o'clock, 5 hours time, big game, full house at Hillsborough. One of the bottles empty. So lo and behold, bottles were in there for an hour, breakfast, champagne. Some people has a glass, some people has 2 or 3 glasses. Bottles were finished. Anyway, comes about, have the team meeting, travel down to the ground, the stadium, and game kicks off. Fantastic atmosphere. Manchester, this is when Eric Cantona is playing, and they've got gigs, everybody. Fantastic. The score at half time was 3-0 for Sheffield Wednesday, which was unbelievable. And on the 46th minute, as the second half kicked off, it was 3-1. And the game finished 3-3.
Champagne kicked in.
Champagne kicked in. But that was the thing about Ron. He was so different. He loved the light-hearted entertainment, the fun side of it, and wasn't afraid to do something different. And I think that's important as a coach or manager, that you are prepared to try things. Now, there's certain limits you can go to, but from Ron's point of view, he was terrific at doing different things.
I have a good friend who was at the time the coach at the Sport in Lisbon, and they were having a rough patch, and he told me one day they took the team to the local park, and they had the players on the swings, on the roundabout and everything, just to break the tension. And he's talking about doing something different. And I thought, what a great creative idea. The kids they went back to being kids for half an hour before the big game, and it was fantastic.
Well, just on Big Ron again, you mentioned the park. We were playing, funny enough, Manchester United again in the final at Wembley in 1991, and we were staying in the Hyde Park Hotel in central London, and Ron says, right, we're going out training, and we thought, well, there's no pitches handy, and the traffic was an absolute nightmare, as it often is. We find this bit of grass, and there's about 3 or 4 huge trees, maybe 200–300 years old. He said, right, that's one set of goals, there's the other set of goals, and that's where we did our set pieces for the game against Manchester United on the Sunday, and we beat Manchester United 1-0. Just different ways of releasing the pressure out of the situation.
Let's talk about the cup final for a little bit, because it's everybody's dream to play at Wembley. Very few people have the experience that you've had and went out to that hallowed turf. Take us back for a moment in the locker room before kick-off, and Ron Atkinson's giving you a pre-game talk. Tell us a little bit about the pre-game talk and how you felt going out the tunnel and handling the pressure.
The pre-game talk, there's very little discussion. We'd done most of our work prior to that. The other little thing that he did on the day of the game, we were all sitting there pre-match at the hotel, about 4 hours before kick-off, and Stan Boardman, comedian, he walked in. And Stan was with us all pre-match. He was on the coach from the hotel to Wembley, on the mic, and that was it. That was basically it. Big Ron got us in the dressing room. The mood was relaxed. There was a good feel factor, terrific team spirit. Big Ron just said, go out and enjoy the occasion. We did, and we beat Manchester United 1-0. Great way to learn off people, and there's rights and wrongs, but you've got to get that happy medium which suits you as an individual.
What's it like playing at Wembley?
Well, it's like playing in the World Cup. It's the pinnacle of anyone's career. I was very fortunate in one scenario where we won at Wembley, which is most important, and I've been on 3 other occasions where we got beaten at Wembley. But to play at the old Wembley, the Twin Towers, and so much tradition there over the years, was something very, very special, and something as an individual that sticks with you in your mind for the rest of your life.
Would you, hypothetically, would you rather win a World Cup as a player or as a manager?
Well, I'll speak for myself. There's nothing like playing. When you're a player, you can do something about it. You're out in the pitch, you're involved, you're focused. When you're a manager, you do all your work pre-game, and when the players cross that white line, you stand and pray for 90 minutes, hoping that they do all the things that we've worked on. So to play would be something special, but just because I come from a smallish country with not a lot of numbers to pick and choose from, to represent your country at the World Cup finals, which I was very fortunate to do in 1986, and then be manager in 2008 through to now, is something very special.
Well, until last World Cup, until the 2006, Ireland was the smallest country in the world to ever qualify for the World Cup. In fact, Trinidad, in the last World Cup, they took that honour. But you've got 25,000 players to choose from. There's 1,500 teams in Ireland. Not a large group of players. How do you really compete at a national stage with so few players?
Well, it's very, very difficult. The one thing that Northern Ireland has produced over many years, they've produced fine sports people across the board, whether it be snooker, cricket, football, rugby, and soccer. And we're very fortunate. They're very dedicated. They're very proud to represent the country. And we, at this current time, we're looking very hard in England, everywhere, of anybody with Northern Irish connections who can represent the country, because to get these people in now, just to boost our numbers, is very, very important.
How much is it a concern, and I know it's been in the media recently, with players who are good players from Northern Ireland and then playing for the Republic of Ireland, and I know that the Football Association is trying to address that issue.
It's a situation at the moment which it's not a nice situation, because I'll mention young Shane Duffy, who is a terrific prospect, centre half at Everton, and he's been with Northern Ireland since the age of 12, 13, right through to he's now 17, 18, and he's just declared himself to play for the Republic. And that's a shame, because there's a lot of work gone into Shane over many years. But whilst the loophole is there for people to pick and choose, shall we say, if and when they want to, then that situation is going to happen. So the quicker that hopefully UEFA or FIFA can come to a conclusion and say Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland, one or other, that's it, black and white, then I think it's best for all, because I think it brings about a little bit of ill feeling through the situation, and that's something that I don't think soccer as a whole needs.
George Best's birthday was last Saturday, May the 22nd. Probably Ireland's gem, treasure, national treasure. He said in an article that I read on 442 magazine was that he felt that there should be an all-Ireland team. And the thing that more prevented that was the recent success of Northern Ireland, and the Republic of Ireland in recent years has prevented it. Do you think there should be an all-Ireland team?
I think the situation as it is at the moment, I think it's important for the two countries to have their own identity. I think in my lifetime, I can't see there being an all-Ireland. I know there's an all-Ireland rugby team, which has been very successful.
Yeah.
To have an all-Ireland soccer team, I'm not sure whether it'll happen. I can't see it whilst I'm the manager of Northern Ireland over the next few years, but you never know. And it's one of those scenarios as time moves on. It could happen, but I can't see it for the foreseeable future.
George Best. Let's talk about George Best for a second. What's been your experiences with George Best? Have you had an opportunity to play with George Best during your career?
The only time I had the opportunity to play with George was in Pat Jennings' testimonial, and George had actually finished playing. And let me tell you, the talent he showed that night for somebody who wasn't playing on a regular basis through retirement was absolutely fantastic. And what a great, even though it was Pat Jennings' testimony for Northern Ireland, George Best just stole the night with his ability, and the fact that he was on the pitch showing his tremendous skills that he possessed. And as you say, he's a real treasure and a gem from Northern Ireland's point of view, and probably, can we ever emulate George Best again? I'm not very sure.
Last night I was at home watching George Best play against Northampton Town when he scored 6 goals. Do you remember that game?
Yes, I do, certainly, yeah.
And again, doing some research, George Best, he talked about his best game that he felt. And it was in a home international game in the 60s against Scotland.
Right.
He felt he played the best game of his life. He did nothing wrong. Should the home internationals be brought back?
Well, funny you should say that. The Celtic Cup starts in February 2011. And that Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales and the Republic of Ireland, England won't participate because obviously they're very busy and so on, but those 4 nations start the Celtic Cup, which has been called, in February, and I think that's a big plus. I was very fortunate. I made my debut in 1984 against Wales, in Wales, and we won the very last British Championship, so right. I got a medal in my first international, which was fantastic.
Now you've had a total of 80 caps for your country, 66 at full international, 14 at the under-18 level. Where do you put all those caps? Does your mum have them, or
I'll tell you where they are, and my wife's not too happy. I've got a lovely cabinet at home where all my football, shall we say, memorabilia, medals, whatever. And over those 66 senior caps, I think there's about 12. You get 1 cap per year, but they call it, if you play 12 games in a season or 10 games in a year, they call it 10 caps, but the Northern Ireland gives you 1 cap a year with the games sewn on them. And so we've not got 80 caps, we've got, I think there's about 14 caps in all, 12 seniors and then 2 for the youth, and then the other 14 games. So real nice things to have, and again, something as you're walking through the living room, you just have a little glance and it brings back memories, but special things to possess.
Let's talk for a brief moment about Howard Wilkinson, how instrumental he has been in your career. It seems that, you know, at Sheffield Wednesday, assistant coach of the England under-21 national team with Howard Wilkinson, is that correct?
Howard's been a huge part of my career, player-wise and management-wise. I started off with Howard at Notts County when Jimmy Searle was the manager and Howard was the first team coach. He then moved on to Sheffield Wednesday, and shortly after I finished up at Sheffield Wednesday, then again to Leeds, and I moved to Leeds and worked with him with the England 21s. And somebody like Howard, who is a man for exceptional knowledge, very professional, very organised and very disciplined on and off the pitch. They're all things that I picked up off him as a player and have taken those with me into management. Because I think there's certain rules in life that you do require, disciplines in life, to make you reasonably successful. And he's certainly been successful over the years. And I've learned from him. But again, you've got to put those things into your own way of selling to the players.
Big mistake young coaches make, I feel, is that they'll often emulate one particular coach and they want to be like one particular coach. I know when I started coaching at a young age, Malcolm Allison, Bill Shankly, Don Revie, Brian Clough was my hero, and I used to want to be like those guys. Is that a big mistake for a young coach, to try and be the exact copy of another coach?
I think so. That's a personal opinion. I think it's always wise to keep a very open mind, and again, deliver the sessions how you want to deliver them, not through somebody else's voice or eyes, but it's about you, because you're the one that is selling to your group of players. But there can never be another Brian Clough, there can never be another Malcolm Allison. They're legends in their own right, done fantastic things in the game of soccer in England, and in world football indeed. And I think all you can do as an individual is learn of people like that.
Well, Jimmy Cyril, Peter Eustace,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
Ron Atkinson, Trevor Francis. I mean, you've had the whole smorgasbord of coaches to learn from. Who's been your inspiration? What coach? Give me a couple of names of coaches that have really inspired you to be who you are right now.
Well, Wilkinson was a big influence because I spent a lot of my career under him. But you get Howard's methodical preparation, and then you get Ron, who's so laid back and easygoing, and the coach, I can remember the coach going out and setting up all these different drills, and big Ron would walk out and say, right, I'm going to be Pelé this morning, or Socrates, put that away, we have a five-a-side. And that was his different way of man management. So it's picking the bones out of this, picking the bones out, put it together, and shaping it your way.
What footballers did you admire as a kid?
Well, coming from Northern Ireland, George Best, obviously, but I was always a big Spurs, Tottenham Hotspurs fan when I was a youngster. For some reason, I don't really know whether it was the white strip or what, but Martin Chivers, Alan Gildersleeve, Steve Perryman, the like Pat Jennings again was at Spurs for a period of time. So all those types of players and people really you look up to.
The best player you've ever played with, and the best player you've ever played against as a fullback?
Best player I probably played with, I would say Chris Waddle.
Good Geordie lad.
Good Geordie lad. Trevor Francis was another one, but Trevor was at the end of his career, so I only saw fleeting glances at Trevor when he came on as a substitute for Sheffield Wednesday.
Was that at Sheffield Wednesday with Chris Waddle?
Yes.
So you played a cup final at Arsenal?
Yes.
The replay games?
Yes, we did. Yeah, both of us did. We cried after.
Chris Bart Williams told me he came on as sub for Chris Waddle. That was his claim to fame then at the time.
Well, Chris, fantastic guy, magnificent talent, and one of those where if the ball wasn't around him, you know what I mean, if you didn't know him, you could hold up the board and say, right, Chris, you're coming off, you're tired. But all of a sudden the ball would land at his feet, a sudden burst of enthusiasm and energy, and he was off, creating or scoring fabulous goals. He was a real pleasure just to play with, be on the same field.
Describe yourself as a player and answer me, do you feel that how you played reflects the way you coach?
Yeah, I think it does. I was hard-working, and I had to be hard-working. I wasn't blessed with the talent of Best or Waddle.
I don't know, I saw your practice today. That left foot looked pretty good in that shooting practice.
You got to. I'm a big believer in hard work, and I had to work hard all throughout my career. And overall, I'm very pleased with what I achieved. I've taken that hard work ethic into my management, where I had 6.5 years, fantastic years at Norwich City, where we reached the playoff final, got promotion by winning the championship, and keeping Leicester in the Championship, was asked to do that for them, and now with Northern Ireland, and we've just missed out by the odd 3 points here and there over the last 2 campaigns of qualification. So I think it's through hard work, dedication, and the other thing I think is most important for young coaches is to have good people around them, because you can't do everything on your own. You've got to delegate, you've got to trust, and you pull it all together, and you move forward from there.
Hard work, leadership are all qualities of a good captain. You were captain of the Irish national team. You've just appointed Stephen Cregan.
Stephen Cregan, yeah.
For the tournament, for this tour as captain.
Yeah.
What makes a good captain? I mean, you could put an armband. I mean, you can tell somebody's a captain, but what makes a good leader? You can't make him a leader, but you can make him captain.
I think a good leader is somebody who, in any situation or circumstance, keeps a calm head, deals with it, comes through it, and comes out the other side. And in Aaron Hughes, who's normally our captain and leader, he's so calm in his approach. You very rarely hear him raise his voice. He deals with everything in a very controlled manner, and that's a great thing to have on the pitch, especially when the game's at 100 miles an hour. And Stephen Craig, an opportunity for him. Stephen's 34, been a fantastic servant for Northern Ireland. I'm trying to push him towards the 50 cap mark, so give him as many games as we can. And it's an opportunity to give him the armband for 2 games, because he fully deserves it through being a great professional.
In terms of football, do you think that kids are hungrier today or less hungry? When I look at kids with players that I coach, they've got cell phones, laptops, they seem to have everything accommodating to them. Whereas back in the days, it was an opportunity, you know, 30, 40 decades ago, it was an opportunity, professional football, to make a living, to get out of the hard-working, rough life of working in the coal mines, the shipyards. Yeah. Are we losing that?
I think we are. And as much as we, nowadays, shall we say, we want the best surface, we want the best surroundings, we want the best tracksuits, the best training gear, shirts, and so on. I don't think it's a good thing, because like you and I, we used to set our jumpers or our tops on the ground, go lather around, off we go, play in the street, or a bit of grass, parkland, whatever, and you had great fun. And I think you practice your skills there without actually knowing it. Where now everything is so controlled for these youngsters from maybe 6, 8 through to 16. And I honestly think, and I see it myself, when some of these young players get to 16, they've had enough of instruction and discipline through the coaching. Nothing's new to them.
What do you feel makes a player like Ronaldo continue to be hungry? He's a multi-millionaire, he's got the looks, he's got the fame, he's got the fortune, he's in the life. What makes him so hungry every day to play football? I
think that comes from within.
Yeah.
I, as a manager, you as a coach, we cannot install that in the individual. Funny, I just said that to the young players who's here this morning. Mm-hmm. Exactly the same situation. It is up to you as an individual to drive yourself forward, and it's up to you to reach whatever level you want to reach, whether it be there or the very top. Don't let anybody stand in your way, don't let anybody hold you back. That comes through self-determination, pride within oneself, and the desire to do well.
Is football a mirror image of life? Is there life lessons in football?
Oh, very much so. In life you've got to give respect to earn respect, and in football, if you don't pay the game your opposition respect, it is one game that can certainly turn around and kick you in the teeth and bring you back down to earth. And that is the fascinating thing about the game of football. It's a little bit like golf. You go and have a good round of golf and you think you've cracked it, you go out the next day and you have an absolute nightmare. It brings you back to earth, and I think that's the fantastic thing throughout the world, that yeah, you've got your top teams, your best players, but they also can have an off day as well.
Talk about a little for a second about the transition from management from, say, for example, Blackpool or Norwich, now to the international stage. What's the hardest difficulty from sitting in a seat here at Norwich City, now you're in charge of the national team Ireland? What's the biggest change?
Biggest change is that I see the players maybe once every 6 weeks. So I haven't got contact with the players on a daily basis, and that's something that I, as a manager, coach miss terribly. But I've enjoyed managing my country for the last 2.5 years. It's gone very, very well. The difference is that when there's a game coming up, your preparation a week, 10 days before, all your training sessions, make sure everything's right. You come together with the players. You've only got the players for 3 days prior to the game. So that work is very intense, very controlled and very disciplined to make sure that the players are going out on the pitch with the picture that you want for them to try and win the game. And then after that, you've got another week of tidying that scenario up. After that, I oversee the 17s, 19s, 21s, and there's the PR work in Northern Ireland to be done of going into the communities, whether it be schools or sports complexes, whatever, which is very, very important work. But after 30 years being in the game as a player and the coach, shall we say 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the last 2.5 years have been a breath of fresh air, where those 4 or 5 weeks in between the games gives you some real good family time. I've got 3 boys, well, 2 men and a boy now, and the first 2 boys I miss really growing up, because you're on the road between your club football and your international football, and it's a real pleasure now that I've got a 13-year-old that I can watch him play his football, rugby, cricket, and get away and have a nice holiday every now and again.
As I say, the most important things in life, Nigel, are not things. You know, there are relationships and there are family.
Well, yeah, and you mentioned a legend earlier on in the interview of Bill Shankly, where I think Mr. Shankly, who was a wonderful man and successful, he said that football was the most important thing in life, life or death. Personally, me as an individual, my family always comes before the football scenario, and health also, because I think if you've got your health, you can do whatever you want to do, and to have, again, like your coaching and management, to have good people around you is very, very important from a stable life situation.
Let's talk a little bit about losing, about how do you handle when you walk out of the stadium with a tough defeat? Does it dwell with you for 2 or 3 days? Do you dismiss it immediately after you come out the locker room? How do you handle defeat personally?
I think if you're a football person, you get real feelings about the game. I think losing sticks around with you for a few days after the performance. And that's the one drawback from international football. I've got to wait 6 weeks probably before my next game, whereas in club football, you might have a game 3 days later, go out and perform again, get a win, and that one's gone.
And the converse, if you win, you've got 6 weeks to enjoy it.
Exactly, exactly. So you'd rather win than lose. But the losing feeling, it's not a pleasant one, but I think when you lose, you've got to have real dignity for the opposition manager and the team that you just played, and congratulate them. And I think that's very important, that you do hold your head up high and say, well, they were the better team, or we were unlucky, and we'll go again next time.
Is there lessons in losses?
Oh, very much so, yeah. I like to win more than lose, put it like that. But I often think, well, I know for a fact, that when you lose a game, you learn more about your players and situations within your group than what you do when you win. Sometimes you're winning games, which is a fantastic feeling, and that's what the game is all about. Sometimes you can be winning and you can be papering over the cracks. Whereas when you lose, you can really analyse the situation, really dissect everything, look at it and say, there's a problem now, let's deal with it, and you sort it out.
There's a multitude of sins hidden in victories, as they say. And you learn more, I think, in one loss about your players than you do in 3 victories. You know?
Yeah, and we had a situation in, what was it, February. We played in Albania, a friendly game. And the pitch wasn't very good. It was about 6 inches deep in mud through heavy rain. So some of our players were mentally, this isn't normal, lovely surface, pleasant surrounding, and we get beat 2-0.
Yeah.
And for me, that showed up to me people in those situations that you can rely on and those that you can't. And to learn from things like that is most important.
When you're watching an international game, like for example, this game coming up against Turkey on Wednesday, and you're watching that game, how much throughout the course of the 90 minutes would you say percentage you'd focus on your team or the opponent? Do you focus on Turkey for the majority of the game to figure out where there's weaknesses, or are you more concerned about what your young guys are doing, or is it a balance?
I am probably 100% focused on my own team. The coach will be probably 50-50 on the opposition and our team, and then we come together at half time, pull everything together before we speak to the players and see who's doing what and what we need to do and so on. So again, it's just a case of teamwork. You can't do, one thing I must stress, you cannot do everything yourself. If you've got to have these people around you who's good at the job to help you.
It must feel good as an international manager to award somebody their first cap, to have that ability, that power to select a player and to give them the credit they deserve and to be that. How does it feel when you pick somebody for the first time? Do you feel something good inside?
I go back to 1984 when I made my first appearance for Northern Ireland. A fantastic feeling, and to move on so many years and the one thing I do love to do as a manager is to bring youngsters into the team, because I think fresh blood, enthusiasm, excitement, great energy, it's good to have around the group of players. So to give a young player his first cap, I love to see their face, the delight on their face, and it gives you a good feel factor as well.
People in Ballymena must be very proud of you. Tell us a little bit about Ballymena. Is it a small town or?
Ballymena is a small town in County Antrim, northwest of Belfast. It's in the countryside, but over the last 15-20 years it's grown quite dramatically of people moving in and around the area. It's a very nice place to live, and I don't know whether people are very proud of me or not, because I'm never there that often now because of the work commitments, but
so you're not friends with Liam Neeson?
No, I wish I was.
He is from Ballymena.
Liam's from near Ballymena as well. So again, Ballymena, a little bit like Northern Ireland, Ballymena has produced a lot of high-profile people, whether it be in sport, films, or many other fields, which for a town of its size is phenomenal.
Well, let me ask you a question. My mum's from Derry, Londonderry. And I always used to say Londonderry, and she would always correct me and said it's not, it's Derry. Is that just her, or is everybody in Northern Ireland, they call it just Derry?
No, I think it's the political thing again, and hopefully and thankfully there's a lot of that behind us now, which is great for the whole of Northern Ireland. But shall we say on the Catholic side of the divide, people would probably say Derry, and the Protestant side of the divide, they're very keen to get their London in before the Derry. And that's part and parcel of, that's the way Northern Ireland's been over the last 38, 40 years. And it's something...
Let me ask you, what do you feel has been, well, Ireland's had its highest ranking in FIFA World Time, 27th in a nation. Phenomenal. Now I think you said about 40th, is that correct? Around about 40th?
Yes, I think it's there at the moment.
But for an island, for the size of Ireland to reach 27th in a nation in FIFA is a phenomenal achievement. I mean, what would you say has been your proudest moment with the Irish national team?
I think one, to captain your country in playing the World Cup finals with a super group of players, and a legend and a manager in Billy Bingham, who had two fantastic periods with Northern Ireland as manager. And the other is to win games as a manager for Northern Ireland. I think those two things are the outstanding factors in my mind that gives you self-satisfaction to say that you have worked at the very top for your country, you have been reasonably successful, and you've enjoyed it, which I always say to the players, make sure you enjoy your football.
Any advice you give to a young coach?
Young coach, gain as much knowledge as you can, watch as many different coaches and managers as you can, and then you've got to go and put it into practice on your own. Do not try and be somebody else, be yourself, and enjoy it.
Well, as you can see, a phenomenal coach and a most gracious guest on our show. Until next week on the Coach Show, thank you. Thank you, Nigel.
Cheers, Sean.
Yeah.
All right.
That was brilliant.